Welcome back. My guest is the Deputy Public Protector Advocate Kevin Malunga, and we're discussing his work, his experience, and his take on things from the perspective of the Office of the Public Protector. Now, we know of the high-profile cases, but you take all kinds of complaints, isn't it?
Absolutely.
There's one favorite one that you talk about, Gogo Dlamini.
Yes, the Gogo Dlamini, yes.
Gogo Dlamini.
Yes.
So it's as if it's one person, but you're using Gogo Dlamini as an example of all
now
other
we've
cases.
also got Gogo Makubela and Gogo Mlefe.
Oh, okay, so you've got
and Gogo van der Merwe.
Okay, you've got 4 Gogos now.
Yes.
Let me just remember the names. Gogo Dlamini, Makubela, Mlefe, and van der Merwe. All right. Look, sounds like there's a stage play coming there in my head. If you had all the 4 Gogos, and look at what they complain about.
Absolutely.
But tell me about the typical complaints you receive.
So, the high-profile matters that people are so familiar with, that they get excited about. You're talking about Pravin, Gordon, you're talking about Nkandla and so forth. They probably make about 2% or less than 5% of what we do. 95% are those so-called Gogo Dlamini matters. And remember, our investigations are largely into service failure or conduct failure. And the bulk of complaints are about people complaining about service failure, the failure of the state to render services adequately, or undue delay and other sort of impropriety by the state. And the bulk is against municipality. The bulk of the complaints is against municipalities. You've got your billing, people complain about water, people complain about everything under the sun in terms of services rendered. They even had a lady complain about potholes. In fact, all over the place, people complain about potholes and so forth. So that is the service element. People, pensions, you have your teachers and so forth.
Let me take one specific complaint, which seems to be spread around the country, especially Limpopo, Free State, Northwest. It's got to do with sewage in the water and lack of provision of fresh water to communities. The Vembe district comes to mind.
Yes.
What is behind that? Because we always hear that money is allocated for this, for that, but then when journalists and members of the public complain, they seem to be complaining about the same thing. What do you think is behind that? I mean, one would say these are the basic things that you do anyway. You should do them. That's part of the work.
Well, I think it's a combination of 2 factors, Bratim. On the one hand, there are certain municipalities and localities which genuinely don't have the resources, where they are struggling. And you also have those where there is improper use of resources, and I think I would like to guess that there's more of the latter. South Africa is a middle-income country; it's not a poor country. That some of these challenges should be there. You'll find that the kind of planning and the kind of I worked a lot in the Northwest Province with a lot of their municipalities. You find them all under administration. Change now, you find them almost all of them under administration. You have acting manager, this acting, then it becomes a system of inefficient use of resources. But then public procurement as well is what I would say is South Africa's biggest headache in terms of the quality of procurement. Nkandla was a procurement issue. You get a lot of, and in many instances where government has been embarrassed, it's largely involving around poorly procured contracts or leases. Even people have had to lose their jobs because of badly procured leases and so forth. So likewise, even in that case, you find that when they procure service providers, they don't always get it right. Sometimes...
But there are laws and rules governing that, isn't it? There are regulations that guide, that do tell the public officials how they should go about procuring services and goods.
Yes, indeed. And unfortunately, there are 2 things that are happening here. Either manipulation of that process or just sheer incompetence in the sense that someone doesn't really do it right. But usually it's a combination of both. from the bid adjudication process right up to the delivery of the product in question. And with the state, you find that when people are doing with this, business with the state, I like to give the example of the pen, to say if this pen is 10 Rand, when someone is selling it to the state, they might go for 70, sometimes even 100. So there's that culture of wanting to milk the state at all times. And we've dealt with a lot of those types of investigations. And I think if people become more aware of that sort of, and become conscientious. And then, of course, I think the criminal justice system also needs to help us here, in the sense that we may find things going wrong from an administrative and corruption standpoint, but it doesn't seem like anything is happening beyond that.
I wanted to ask you that probably people are getting demoralized that they come to you for these investigations. You say you've got a large team of lawyers. How many? What is your capacity?
Well, staff is about 400. I think investigative capacity almost 200.
Yeah, and of course, you know, doing the best they can to investigate.
Yes.
And the ideal state is to reduce the number of cases or have them resolved successfully, and some punitive measures of sorts being taken. It never gets to that point to the extent that you'd like to see, I suppose.
Yes, usually with those type of matters, remember we've got the powers to look at cell phone records, bank details, and so forth. We usually say, look, let the Hawks or NPA take it further. So I think what people would like to see is for there to be consequence management, that people, for example, lose the assets that are ill-gotten and so forth, and go to jail. I think that's what people want to see in this country.
And is that happening from where you're sitting?
Well, from this is a subjective view based on handling a lot of these matters over the years. I'm not seeing it happening. I mean, I was quite involved in the Mandela funeral investigation. Now, think about it, Tim. People are mourning South Africa's founding father icon and so forth. In the background, other people are just deciding, how are we going to eat here? You know?
So eating is a problem.
Yes.
Is there a lot of eating?
It's our turn to eat. Remember, Michaela Wrong's our turn to eat. So I think once you decide that it's time to turn off that tap and say, look, your turn to eat is over now. You are going to serve the public. You're going to be civil servants. You're going to be public servants. Make up your mind. You want to be a businessman or you want to be a public servant? You can't be both. So I think that's one of the things that are not coming out, and the public understandably is quite frustrated, in the sense that I'm hoping that now that they're going to get a new NPA head, that person will change that perception that's an organization in slumber, you know, that it can actually, because it's got a lot of power. It can do asset forfeiture. It can prosecute, and people can go to jail and so forth. Which we cannot do.
Just a thought, because you investigate the states at all levels. So it means a person can come to you to complain about the NPA.
Yes, we do.
And then what happens? You'll investigate the NPA, and what happens after that?
We then issue remedial action. Of course, obviously, if it's something that is criminal in nature, that would be a bit of a constitutional conundrum.
Yeah.
But we have received complaints against staff.
Let me put you on the spot. What remedial action would you propose, given what you know about the NPA? You think, what is it that would help the NPA currently?
Well, we have had investigations that allege impropriety in terms of acts or omissions that are either corrupt or abuse of power. Yeah. That's the other word, abuse of power. We have received those kind of things where people allege even procurement or other irregularities against entities such as NPA and others. So we would probably issue the same type of remedial action that we would issue.
Okay, I don't want to belabor the point, because at least it looks like a new head of NPA will be appointed. You are very active on social media, and I've noticed you have commented about the way the public itself sometimes conducts itself, especially when it comes to protest action service delivery. And you feel very strongly about the fact that public property gets destroyed in the process. Tell me more about your feelings and views about that.
Oh, yes. I was raising that issue earlier on, that we deal with a lot of service delivery related matters where people are alleging that services are inadequate, and very often they say to us, we burn things because public functionaries are not listening to us. So I've seen that in Kopela and all these other places, and the kind of there's a link usually between the quality of responses that they get from the leadership and their propensity to burn and destroy things. That said, I have been very, very firm in my belief that that's not the correct way.
It doesn't solve the problem.
Yes, because you're going to burn the school or the library and so forth. And it has to, the money that has to fix that has to come out of the same fiscus. But that said, I'm not going to be, give this middle class holier than thou answer to say I don't understand. I certainly understand where those people are coming
Just
from.
a quick question, brief response from you. We tended to put a lot of emphasis on the person who occupies the office of the public protector. Are we misguided or not in that regard? Brief response.
Well, yes and no. I think it's important that obviously there is a public protector who is the head of the institution, and obviously they are the visionary of the institution. But then, of course, what people must understand is that there's a huge team that is working on all matters and sundry around the country, 20 offices around this country, in terms of the constitutional mandate to be accessible to all persons and communities. So when people say to me, hey, are you guys still working at the public protector? I think that's where the whatever fight they may be having with the head of the institution, they shouldn't take it out on the entire institution, in the sense that there's always work going on. In the sense that Gogo Dlamini can go to Kuruman, Gogo
must still
Dlamini
have confidence
can
that,
go to George,
yes.
she can go to Nelspruit.
Well, Kevin,
yes,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for coming around and spending time with us.
Yes.
And I'm sure Gogo Dlamini and Father Merv and others are very happy that they heard from the Deputy Public Protector. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Well, there you are. Now we know a little bit more about how the Public Protector functions and the troubles and challenges that are facing the different communities throughout the country. Keep them busy, though. They welcome your complaints. Thank you for joining the Mudisa Network. And be sure to tune in again next week, Saturday. From us, have a great day.